107.7 Pulse FM, home of the 2019 federal election for Surrey and its neighboring cities. Hashtag Pulse Politics.
Good morning. The Canadian federal elections are coming up on October 21st. Today's featured debate is Fleetwood-Port Kells. My name is Tara Lopez. I'm joined by Pulse FM's news director, Kevin Diakiw. Good morning, Kevin. Now, what we're going to do before we get started on our intense questions, we're just going to go around clockwise and ask our candidates to introduce themselves and the party which they are representing. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Shinder Purewal, Conservative Party of Canada.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Ohana, and I'm running with the NDP.
Good morning, Ken Hardie with the Liberal Party of Canada.
Good morning, all. Really good to have you here. What we'd like to do is, first of all, ask you what motivates you for politics. I mean, you've got the media looking at you at every turn. You've got people with Oppo research questioning your every move. Isn't you running for this questioning your sanity to begin with? So what we'd like to know is what motivates you to do this and what's your key issue in the riding. We'll start with Conservative Shinder Purewal.
I started my grade life in Canada as a teenager, grade 11 p.m., and what I found is even working at $3 an hour, still I could dream of buying a house, going to university, although I didn't have father. He died when I was 1 month old. Working, studying at the same time. And now when I door knocked since December, the entire constituency, now we're going for a second round, I hear the word affordability, and people are sort of struggling from paycheck to paycheck. At the moment when everything is getting costly, the federal government is adding more taxes, including the latest one, which is going to go up and up and up. That's a carbon tax. So what attracts me to the Conservative Party and its agenda and Andrew Scheer is, he wants to make life more affordable by lowering the taxes, by giving more incentives to various schemes like GST off heating bills, universal tax cut, maternity benefits tax-free, and other things which would lower the taxes and make sure that life is more affordable so people can actually save something to get ahead.
Thank you very much, Shinder Purewal. And Ohana, same question.
Yeah. So for me, I was very much born as a fighter. Throughout my entire life, whether it was my dad breaking his back when I was 9 years old and writing letters to the government, but then as a professional school teacher, as a social justice educator, as an anti-racism activist, being on the ground level, fighting at the grassroots, at every level of government. So the reason I decided to actually join the political field, as it were, is that I want to continue fighting for those rights. I feel there's a lot of people who don't feel heard, and that's actually one of the doorstep issues, is whether it's affordability, whether it's pharmacare, whether it's electoral reform, whether it's climate change, whether it's guns, gangs, violence, all of that, the root of that is that people are not being heard, and their lives, they don't see themselves represented in their government. So my hope is that I can bring those voices forward to Ottawa and to really fight for people. I'm strong, I'm passionate, everybody knows that, and certainly for me, I don't take what the government gives, as some sort of, just take it and go with it. We have to be critical, we have to analyze what policies are provided to us, and I think there's a host of areas where the last 13 years, I would say, there's been a lot lacking. So in fighting for affordability, in fighting for a whole host of issues, I hope that my voice can pierce through kind of the political field and create change.
Thank you, Annie Ohana. Same question to you, Ken Hardie.
Well, Ken Hardie, Liberal Party of Canada, started off my first career was in radio. The second career was in public affairs with ICBC, short time with the Vancouver Police, and then, of course, Translink before I retired first time. And my motivation for getting involved in this really sprung out of the experience, particularly at Translink, where we looked at how a region grows, how it prospers, the things you need to do to improve quality of life for people. And, I've had 4 years actually head start on Annie, listening to people, hearing what the issues are in the community and taking them forward. But the key motivator for me was vision. What kind of country do we need to have? And in my vision, it's a country where the government isn't afraid to invest in people. It's a country where you want to build an economy, preserve the environment. Try and do them both, which is not easy, but I think we're succeeding in that. But also not to turn your back on the people who need a hand up, not a hand out. So these are the core values that brought me into this, and it's the thing that keeps me going.
Okay. And I'm listening for a top issue that you're hearing in the riding.
Well, top issue in the riding still remains the guns, gangs, firearms. All you have to do is mention the bans that we're going to put in place on certain types of weapons, and that's guaranteed to get you a lot of traction on your Facebook page.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
You're listening to Pulse Politics. Today's featured debate is Fleetwood-Port Kells. With the Canadian federal election coming up on October 21st, we do have the Liberal, Conservatives, and NDP candidates from Fleetwood-Port Kells joining us in studio. That includes the NDP's Annie Ohana, the Conservatives' Shinder Purewal, and the Liberals' Ken Hardie. I'm Tara Lopez Kevin Diakiw. It's time to spin the wheel of issues. Let's give it a roll. And it has fallen on the environment. All right.
Okay, so we're on the environment. We're going to start with Annie Ohana with the NDP. The environment, what's broken and how do we fix it?
What's not broken, unfortunately. So what we're realizing is that through all the scientific research in the world that we can throw at it, that we are in a climate emergency. But let's go beyond that a little bit more. So beyond just the idea of the emissions and those rising and how do we deal with those substantive issues, which we've seen throughout multiple reports, the reality is that in Canada, we are in a transition mode. And I think we need a government and strong federal leadership to really take us through the transition faster, more efficient, and in a way that doesn't leave anybody behind. So where the NDP have a strong disagreement with the federal Liberals is that we don't think we need to buy pipelines. We don't think we need to keep subsidizing fossil fuel industries. Rather, we want to shift things over and really bring forward the kind of economic innovation necessary to create that next revolution. We've had the digital revolution. We need an environmental revolution. We need that green revolution. So our Green New Deal is very clear to the tune of whether it's retrofitting homes and not creating a whole host of jobs there. 300,000 jobs is a conservative estimate, actually. A lot of reports tell you like millions of jobs could be created. So we want to see a bit of a game changer in terms of our federal policies that take us to that next level. We can do it. Absolutely, there are other countries in the world that are going full steam ahead with solar panel energy and any sorts of things of that nature. The reality is we need to be forcing our polluters to change. We feel that, the average citizen is kind of bearing the brunt of the climate change, of the realities of what they're subsidizing, and the fact that we're getting left behind by the rest of the world. So we want to see the change. We want to put it into place, and we think we have the most comprehensive plan from transportation, which is a huge issue in Surrey, Fleetwood-Port Kells, to like the larger dynamics of how do we build new infrastructure, and Surrey could be, kind of a beautiful kind of base point for that, build the infrastructure and bring forward a Green New Deal that will take us into the future.
Okay. Thank you very much, Annie. Now, you're running under the assumption that the jobs lost in oil and gas will be matched by the jobs gained in tech.
Yeah.
How can you know that for sure?
I know that for sure from talking from people in the oil and gas industry, because the skill sets that they have, we're not talking about complete replacement. The transition is real. So the skill sets that a welder might have, like any person that's working on like a pipeline, there are already kind of manufacturing bases set up where they can transition into making that technology we need for whether it's transportation, whatever that looks like, right? For electric grids, all of that. So we know that the transition can happen. And the idea is that how can a government do that responsibly, without taking away the bread and butter kind of realities of most people.
Okay, thank you very much. Same question over to Shinder Purewal.
The science tells us there is a problem, and the science has solutions. These are technological solutions. First and foremost, liberals will never mention that, but the biggest corporations, industrial polluters, will actually go after them. We will ask them to reduce carbon prints by adopting Canadian technologies. It gives those smaller companies in Canada, which actually have solutions, more business, thus more money can be spent on research and development. The second aspect of our plan is to provide subsidies for home renovation to lower the energy costs. And that's, again, a big business for the smaller companies to rise up. Canada produces about 1.6% of world's carbons. Just 3 countries alone, US, China, and India, they produce more than 50% of the carbons. So if we have technology, if we can develop that technology to competitive global levels, they can actually provide global solutions going out where the real carbon is coming from, where the real big problem is coming from. So the Liberal plan of adding carbon tax, it's actually a tax grab. It's not a technological solution. So we actually have a solution, and if you want to read more, we have a 60-page document on conservatives.ca just dealing with the environment. So technology demands and technology demands should be met to improve our environment.
Thank you very much for that. Now, the hue and cry of the people, the global warming deniers and all that, have long relied on a techno fix. It hasn't arrived yet. What makes you think it will?
I think the long-term solution is in technology. Technology will bring it to the carbons down. Science will tell us that that's a scientific way of thinking. You use technology to bring it down.
Okay, thank you. Ken Hardie, same question to you.
I think that in British Columbia, we should be darn proud of the fact that we have actually created the gold standard in the way to take the most important first initial step in fighting climate change. And that is the price that we put on carbon 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. And it's really simple. You know, you increase the price of something, but you give the money back. Giving the money back, in this case, by way of income tax reductions here in BC. That incents people to change their attitude and their approach because they end up ahead of the game. So this puts a lie to what conservatives say about, you know, the carbon tax doesn't work. Here's how it's worked in BC. Since we put it in, our per capita emissions are 14% lower. Our economy's grown by 26%. And because of the way the base revenue is treated, we pay the lowest income taxes in the country, which is why the shameless federal Liberal government stole the idea and is putting it into practice in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and New Brunswick, and all going well into Alberta in the new year. We can grow the economy and deal with environment all at the same time. We have to. The transition, especially for Alberta and Saskatchewan, is going to be hideously expensive and very painful for families. What we want to be able to do is accelerate what we've already started to do, supporting clean tech industries, using the skills that Annie mentioned that are already there in the oil patch, just redirect them to something else. But it does take a national vision. And we have the national vision. We also have, if you aggregate all of the things that we've done in our 4 years, a $70 billion program that's already dealing with climate change. So the foundation's there. The table is set. We'll add to that by planting 20 billion new trees over 10 years. And in the process, get us down to at least our Paris targets, which I will agree with the Greens and the NDP are clearly not enough, but it's a darn good start, and we're further down the road than the other parties would get you.
Thank you very much, Ken. Now, I have to ask you, $70 billion, that's a large chunk of change. Now, how are we going to accommodate that kind of expenditure?
Well, it's already in. It's already in the budget.
What are we not spending that we're accommodating for that?
What are we not spending? Well, of course, our party has believed in growing the economy. So this isn't just dealing with a finite pie out of which you've got to, scrimp and save because the pie isn't big enough. We've grown the pie. In the last 4 years, our economy has grown ultimately many times more than the Conservatives managed to do in 10 years. Our GDP is growing up average about 3%. We have the lowest unemployment in a long, long time. And we're lifting people out of poverty, which is also more of a social issue, but it does actually have to do with quality of life, and the environment is a piece of that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You are listening to Pulse Politics. Today's featured debate is Fleetwood-Port Kells. We do have in studio the candidates from the Liberals, Conservatives, and NDP parties. We do have time to spin the wheel one more time. Let's see where that issue falls. And it's looking like crime
Oh,
is your
boy.
next topic, and you have
Okay.
about 1 to 2 minutes to respond.
Right, we start this time with Shinder Purewal. Crime. How do you address this problem from the federal level?
It requires actually 3 levels support. One is prevention. Prevention starts with the families, community, and we need to give a lot of resources to community-based organizations. And the federal government can provide those resources to keep our kids out. And those who fall into those gangs, then you need the second approach, that is intervention. Again, you need resources. When I went to school, we used to have an RCMP officer liaison for each high school. I don't see that anymore. I'm not sure the RCMP has less resources, more resources, but that approach has simply been abandoned. They knew each and every student there on campus in the schools. The third approach is those who are die-hard, those who will never leave, is suppression. For suppression, we need to arm our police officers. We need to make sure they have laws on their side. For example, gang membership should be a crime. It should be in the criminal code. That's a federal jurisdiction. And once you have membership in the gangs, you should be arrested. And the legal side, the judges should have again, laws on their side that they can use to put them away for a long time. So it's a multi-pronged approach which requires a lot of federal resources, and I will fight for those.
Thank you very much. Now, you say gang membership should be a crime. I'm just wondering about those kids who are just sort of on the fringe and maybe become associated with it. Then you throw them in jail. You institutionalize them. They become hardened criminals. How do you respond?
No, that's where the second approach comes. Intervention. That's where you need resources to keep them out, to bring them out. But there are some hardcore elements who will never leave, and for them we need suppression.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ken Hardie, over to you. Crime. How do we deal with it?
Well, we keep doing some of the things that have already been done. I think Surrey can take a big bow with the SAFE program, which involves bringing together the community organizations that have already had a track record of dealing with individuals, either sampling the gang life or in it, and rescuing them, basically. The SAFE program, though, adds if you like, the combined efforts of these organizations into one smooth machine, if you will, that will do the interventions right at the family table. Discreet interventions where people go into the home, they deal with the family whose kids are at risk. We have, as a government, put hundreds of millions of dollars into anti-gang, anti-crime programs right across the country. Specifically in Surrey, though, we announced $7.5 million to support the SAFE program, which will draw 4,500 kids out of gang life over the next 5 years. The other thing that we've done is rebuild the capacity of people like the RCMP. The Conservatives cut $500 million from them. Canada Border Service Agency, the Conservatives cut over 1,000 positions there. We've built that back up, plus new technology, plus new laws to back up some of this, so that we actually have the boots on the ground on the enforcement side, as well as the social services on the ground to deal with the kids who are at risk.
Thank you for that. Now, I've heard a lot about what the Liberals have done, but are you saying that you've done all that you can, or is there more that you can do with regards to that?
Well, one of the things that, and this is why, our office, our constituency office here has been such a huge supporter of the SAFE program, because it was meant to be monitored and measured. So what more needs to be done? Well, let's see what kind of results we're getting from the SAFE program. If we're not getting the results we need, of course, we make adjustments as we go along. We intend to ban certain types of weapons, automatic or semi-automatic weapons designed only to kill people. We also intend to give cities the tools they need, if they want to do it, to ban handguns, which is something that we hear an awful lot. So it is an iterative approach. We're never going to be done on this one.
Okay, thank you very much. Annie Ohana with the NDP, same question.
Yeah. So I've been working in this field for several years now, because as an inner city school educator, I've worked with groups like Wake Up Surrey and others to really bring forward the concerns of parents and families and people that have been affected by crime. And the reality is a lot of people don't feel they're being supported really well, that there's a lot more that can be done. So I want to separate into three categories: youth, organized crime, and enforcement. So I feel that police officers and enforcement aren't always listened to, because from Baltaj Singh Dillon to a whole host of other people I've spoken to, they will say you're not going to wrest your way out of this problem. That criminalization is not necessarily the best answer here. So as an educator who actually teaches youth, the NDP working to put in $100 million in terms of like specific youth programming. I run some of that programming. That money will come in very handy. It will kind of intervene at the very base level and far beyond the idea of at-risk youth and gangs, but really mental health issues, social issues, poverty issues, a whole host of issues, that identity issues that lead kids to kind of stray and be preyed on, quite honestly. I feel sometimes we always think of crime in youth, and that's unfair. What about organized crime? What about the fact that we've had basically it's been laying fallow this idea of really going after money laundering. So we want to put money into a dedicated, RCMP run, department that we need to kind of pick up on again to really kind of attack that clearly illegal, clearly criminal element that has distorted our housing market, that has done so much wrong into our society.
Get informed with the next debate on Monday with Pulse Mornings between 7:30 and 8 o'clock.